Would you stand, please? Thank you. You may be seated.
I dream of a city called glory, so bright and so fair. When I entered the gates, I cried holy. Angels all met me there. They carried me from mansion to mansion, and all the sights I saw. Then I said, I want to see Jesus, 'cause he's the one who died for all. I bowed on my knees and cried, as I enter the gates of that took me down the streets of heaven. Oh, the seas were too many to take.
That song is very special to us. We played it over and over and over in the last few days that Dad was with us. On behalf of the family of R.L. Jackson, we want to welcome you to his celebration of life, because we do celebrate where he is today. In this service, you're going to find some serious times. There's going to be some funny moments and maybe some unexpected song choices. But if you knew Dad, that's who Dad was. That's how Dad was, so it fits him perfectly. Everyone here was connected to Dad in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and that makes you being here special to our family. Thank you so much for coming.
Salvation, you are the rock that moves me, you are the rain that fills my soul. Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole. And this is my song of praise. Of heaven, your glory fills the earth with your power and majesty. Nothing compares to your worth. Oh God of my salvation, you are the rock that moves me, you are the rain that fills my soul. Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole. And this is my song of praise. Oh, this is my song of praise. Oh God of my salvation, you are that moves me. You are the rain that fills my soul.
Rain that fills my soul.
Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole. And this is my song of praise.
Oh, I love to praise.
Have come to worship, have come to praise you, for I know the strength of your name. And if the earth should pass away, you, oh Lord, will remain the same. Oh God of my salvation, you are the rock that moves me. You are the rain that fills my soul.
You're the rain that fills my soul.
Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole. And this is my song. Oh God of my salvation, you are the rock that moves me. You are the rain that fills my soul.
You're the rain that fills my soul.
Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole. And this is my song.
This is my song.
Oh God of my salvation, you are the rock that moves me. You are the rain that fills my soul.
You're the rain that fills my soul.
Whenever life seems heavy, I know you're more than ready to come and make my spirit whole.
Come and make me whole.
And this is my song.
This is my song of praise. My song of praise.
It must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You've been content to let me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, while you were the one with all the strength. Only a face without a name. I never once heard you complain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than appeared to go unnoticed. But I've got it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. You are the wind beneath my wings.
Obituary for Robert Lawrence Jackson. Robert Lawrence Jackson, beloved husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and friend, passed away peacefully on February the 9th, 2025 at the age of 87. He was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Ariel moved to Lubbock, Texas in 1962, where he spent most of his life a devoted and active member of Rock City Church for over 60 years. He was known for his unwavering faith and deep commitment to his church and family. Ariel also had a passion for guiding young people and served as a leader for several Boy Scout troops, instilling in them the values of loyalty, responsibility, and kindness. Ariel was a proud veteran, having joined the Air Force immediately after high school. He was stationed in Sweetwater, Texas. He met and married his beloved wife, Betty Roberts Jackson, with whom he shared a life full of love and faith. And by the way, they was married 65 years. Of avid outdoorsman, Ariel found peace and joy in the mountains and enjoyed countless camping and hiking trips with his family and friends. His love for nature was matched only by the love of God and his family, who was the center of his life. He is survived by Betty Jackson, daughters Robert and Alan Wagner, Lisa Huffman and Mike, Amy Jackson and son Greg Jackson, grandchildren Kristen, Ty, Presley, Angelica, and one great son, Reese. Ariel is preceded in death by his parents, Lawrence and Lula Jackson, and his sister, Ruth Posey. He was a treasured father, grandfather, and great-grandfather whose legacy of love and faith and service would endure for generations to come. Ariel's life was a testament to his strong will, his commitment to his faith, and his devotion to his family. He will be deeply missed and always remembered for the impact he made on the lives of others and those who were fortunate enough to know him.
Jesus said that if the tree is good, the fruit is good. And if the fruit is good, the tree is good. He didn't mention the condition of the leaves at any given time. He didn't mention if the branches were straight and symmetrical. He just said if the fruit is good, the tree is good. Ariel Jackson he was sort of variegated. he produced a lot of different fruit. And if we had to address the various fruits of his life, it would take a long time today. But we did select about 5 categories of his fruit and kind of plucked them from his tree, and through the mouths of people that witnessed that fruit, you're going to experience that and taste it and see that it is very good.
Well, I wear this uniform today because Ariel was my scoutmaster, and he recruited me for a few years to do the same. I spent a few years serving, but I remember this was a camp out, I'll try to keep it brief, but a story. Seemed like we always went late, and we arrived in the dark, and there was always more kids on the camp out than there was in the meetings. This one particular time we went to White River, and I remember the green and brown station wagon. And I think we had a trailer because all the kids were crammed into the station wagon. I'm sure we were all seat belted in. And we drove there, arrived in the dark, and it was windy and rainy. We didn't have enough tents, and all we had was little pup tents. And so he distributed the tents, and he stayed in the station wagon. And me and Mark Lira, and some of you don't know, but Daniel Oliveras were in one 2-man tent. And of course, he gave us instructions, don't touch the walls. But we were wall to wall. And I remember it was raining, and the wind was probably 30 to 40. And it blew our tent down. But we didn't, neither one of us got out. We kept punching each other saying, you get out and fix the tent. And we just laid there with the tent on us. When we got up the next morning, we were the only ones in the tent. All the other kids had left and went and got in the station wagon with Ariel. And then Ariel told me later, he said he had to get up and use the bathroom. And he's shoving kids out of the way to get out. And of course, when he opened the door, he stepped right into the sticker patch, barefoot. And, but Ariel doing all those things, we had that stuff, and Ariel seemed oblivious to pain throughout because he went through all of those things, when we left, by the way, this campfire had left all of his windows, and the whole station wagon was tinted with smoke. But Ariel's always been a pillar in my life, stood strong. Just his ever-presence has always been a testament, and then the many times we've shared together.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know a lot of you, but I know a lot of the family. The first time I met R.L., Brother Jackson, I've never called him R.L. Anyway, the very first time I met Brother Jackson, our church, or his church at the time, had a bus route. And he would come and pick us up. And I remember when the bus doors open and he would just, hey, he didn't even know us. We just come to the church trying to be saved. Anyway, so we made friends. He was real easy to talk to. And I remember I thought, oh, man, he's so cute. And I was a little girl. And I thought he was just so cute. Anyway, this continued for months and months. And we got to know R.L. And me and my sister and Leroy, my brother, we wanted to get more involved in the church, but we really didn't go to the church, only on Sunday mornings. And when we'd sit in the bus, I would watch Brother Jackson. And I thought, I wonder, he was just so fun. And I thought, who's his family? Who are his kids? So I asked him, and you know, he kind of pointed them out to me, and I kind of paid attention to them in Sunday school. And I would just look at them, you know, I was like, that's their daddy. And I got to know them, and I got to know Robbie. Robbie started inviting me to the Sunday night services, and we started going. During this time, we started getting involved like in Christian cadets and, you know, things that they had. And Brother Jackson, my dad didn't come to the church at the time. He didn't. And he really didn't want to have much to do with it. But Brother Jackson befriended my dad. And they became good friends. They became really good friends. And then, before you know it, my dad started coming. And I would look at the bond that they had, Brother Jackson and my dad. Not too long ago, my dad was going through something medically. And he would always ask, how's my friend? How's Brother Jackson? And then Brother Jackson was going through what he was going through. My dad really missed Brother Jackson. He wanted to see his friend. And the girls told me that Brother Jackson would tell them the same thing, that he wanted to see my dad. My dad is 84, but they had a friendship that was just so beautiful. He would take my dad camping. My dad is not a camping dude. He became all kinds of stuff with Brother Jackson. It was just so sweet. And they brought Brother Jackson to come see my dad. And you should have seen the smile on my dad's face. He said, the mighty Jacksons are here. The mighty Jacksons are here. And they sat and they visited, and I took pictures. I'm so glad I did. And they were in the living room, my mom's living room. And Brother Jackson was sitting on the couch, and my dad pulled up a chair and just sat. And this is my dad with Brother Jackson. He said, and I was like, what are they doing? And Brother Jackson's looking straight, and my dad is looking at Brother Jackson. And I was like, okay. That's their bond, I guess. They continued to talk. They would talk and they'd stop and do the stare. But it was just so, so sweet. Brother Jackson befriended my dad. We became to know the Lord even better because he befriended my dad, and I'm sure he's befriended a ton of people. I was so little in the bus route, and I just remember I really could feel Brother Jackson's love. I could. He was a fun man. He was a dedicated and loyal man. And he was good to my dad. He was good to all of us. I'm grateful he came into our lives the time that he did. Thank you.
Okay. RL, I'm really happy for you today. You struggled hard to get there, but you finally did. I went to see him before Thanksgiving, and his goal was to make it to Thanksgiving. All the kids were coming home, and he wanted to be there. But that was it. After that, he was going to heaven. But he didn't. So after Christmas, or before Christmas, we went to see him. And I said, R.L., you made it through Thanksgiving. You might as well make it to Christmas. And he gave me that. He didn't say a word, but I knew what he was saying. But thank God he made it to Christmas. And a little bit longer. But that man, I have a heart full, I could say, but I just love R.L. because when we first came here, the first place we went to visit was at the Jacksons. And they had a little house, 4 kids, and we came to visit. We had 4 kids. I don't even know if I checked on my kids while they were there. But the Jacksons had 3 girls and 1 boy, and we had 3 boys and 1 girl. And our kids were all kind of age, different ones were kind of the same age, except for Amy. She was the baby, so she was the little one. But from that moment, we had dinner with them, and from that moment, we had a bond. It didn't take long, but we drove away, going back home, and my husband said, "Now that's really a neat family." And we just created such a friendship. And R.L. was special because he took the place that my husband needed. We were new in town. We didn't know anybody. We didn't know people in our church. There's 1,000 Waldens in our church. And we didn't know any of their names. And Brother Jackson told us, he said, it would be good if you would know who all the Waldens are because there's a bunch of them. So he helped in so many different ways. But he was such a friend to Dick. He was loyal. He was a confidant. He gave my husband so much security. And I appreciate him so much for that. He liked coffee. They drank tons of coffee. And they just bonded so much. And it just gave my husband so much courage and so much strength because he had a friend. A friend is a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. And they had a strong friendship. It was like Jonathan and David. They were so close. When my husband would have a harebrained idea, he would run it by Brother Jackson. And if R.L. liked it, it was okay. We were going to do it. We had choir trips, many choir trips, and we didn't know what we were doing. We'd never done that before. But R.L. and Betty were there, second seat in the bus. And what fun we had. We got into some skirmishes, but we had a lot of fun. So many memories from those times that we had with the choir trips. And when I think of R.L., I think of a friend. And to me, that's just the most wonderful, wonderful label for a person. A true friend. He was solid as a rock. After my husband passed away, I felt so lost. I didn't know what I was going to do. But R.L., he filled a role in my life that I needed so bad at that time. He gave me security. He might not have ever said it, but he did. And if R.L. was okay with it, I was okay with it. He just gave me so much security. And there were times he'd give me that look, but he was just such a special man. And one thing I want to do is honor this family today. They have been so awesome to their dad. They have been by his side day and night for months, actually. And like Robbie took off work, stayed here forever. She didn't want to leave. And I just think that's awesome that they spent so much time. I heard the other day that one day they all went around R.L.'s bed and told him they loved him, and I'm not sure what all they told him, but they told him at the end, "Daddy, it's okay to go to heaven." And I heard that little Reese went in there and talked to Papa D told him he loved him, and then he said, "You can go to heaven." I'm not sure exactly the word to use, but isn't that awesome? That's just so awesome. And I just wonder what that, when he got to heaven, oh man, I just wonder what it was like. Can you imagine? First of all, I got to see my husband. That was amazing. And I'm sure that Rick came and slapped him on the back as hard as he could. And then his parents, his sisters, all of his siblings. But most of all, can you imagine when he saw Jesus? I can't fathom that, but I'm happy for him because he did that. And I'm sad for me. I'm sad for all of y'all. Our church, Rock City, won't be the same without R.L. Jackson. But you know what? He was faithful to God. He was faithful in everything he did. He was faithful in his membership and his attendance. Until he got sick, he was right there in that chair where those flowers are. Every service. He was a wonderful man. He was a wonderful friend. And I'm so grateful that I knew him. And I'm thankful for all this family. And I'm thankful to God because today I know and you know where R.L. is.
Hi. Well, I happen to be a lucky member of the family. And I'm one of the first cousins. We're all stair-stepped here. And I said to Aunt Betty last night, I said, I don't know how, if y'all aren't familiar with our family, we call them the sisters. And there's 4 girls. And we don't do anything without the sisters and the sisters' approval. And but I said, Aunt Betty, I don't know how y'all did it. I said, I don't know if it was posse and mossy or what, but y'all married good men. Good men. And that's what my R.L. Jackson was. My Uncle R.L., that's what I called him. And so I looked it up just to see what the definition was, and it was R.L. Jackson. But it says, traits of a genuinely good man. Emotional intelligence, respect for all, a sense of responsibility, honesty and transparency, open-mindedness, humility, and kindness. And that is everything that he exemplified in so many ways. And being close to the girls' ages, I spent every summer with them, or they spent every summer with me. And I don't know, but sometimes I think, I don't know what our parents were thinking. They would just put us on a Greyhound bus. And we were West Texas farmers, so when you got on a Greyhound bus, you went to some broken down gas station that wasn't even being used as a gas station anymore, and they'd let me off. I'm a little kid. And just as soon as I'd get off, I'd look over to the right, and Uncle R.L. would be propped up against the car like that. And I'd come running over, and off we'd go for one of the summer adventures. And they included everything from, and like the gentleman said, I don't know why it all happened at night, but the Jacksons were night owls. And you brought a book, and you brought some clothes, and you brought a fishing pole and some hiking boots. And it always happened at night. We'd go fishing at night. But he taught me so many things. And like everybody said, and Sister McCright said, he was sometimes a man of few words, but he was standing back, looking and taking it all in, and sitting over there laughing at all of us for something. But you just just didn't question. You just, whatever RL and the family was doing, that's just what you did. I mean, I was one of the peoples that came to church with him at 6 o'clock in the morning because the bus wasn't working a lot of the time. And they would have to get the bus working to come pick people up. And this is where we were, here at church. We sold eggs for y'all to go on a trip to New York. We just did all kinds of things. They took me on the bus, and that's where I received the most precious gift of the Holy Ghost. But, you know, I was always cutting up with Uncle Arel. He'd wear, if y'all knew him, it seemed like his glasses were never on his face. They were anywhere other. They were being twirled, or he was gnawing on one end. But most of the time, he wore them on his forehead. And I'd say, Uncle Arel, how come you wear your glasses on your forehead? And he said, so I can see. And as a little kid, you're kind of like dumbfounded by that. And if you knew him, he was always hitting his head. I mean, we waited for him to come home to see what the new scar or the new wound was. And it never bothered him. And I'd say, he came home one day, and I said, Uncle Arel, huh? He, of course, had his glasses on his forehead, and I said, what'd you do to your head this time? Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it. I said, well, Uncle Arel, if you'd wear your glasses on your nose where you could see, you might not hit your head. And he was like, that's not why I hit my head. And I was like, okay, why'd you hit your head? He said, well, I broke my antennas. Because he didn't have hair, he said, so I broke my antennas. But you know, that's the way Uncle Arel taught us things. It's just those quiet little subtle things that he would say that would make you think. And I look back at that and I thought, you know, that's really him teaching me a lesson that, you know, I don't have to have my glasses on my eyes to see. I don't have to have antennas. He had the wisdom of the Lord, and he had the word in his heart. And I remember always when we would get together for the summer, I'd beg to come home with them, and they would always say, they knew Aunt Betty was going to let me come, but they'd say, you need to go ask Uncle Arel. So every time I'd run it, I'd go ask Uncle Arel, Uncle Arel, can I please come home with y'all? And he would say, one time it was like, let me think about it. And I was like, but he was laughing the whole time. He thought that was a big joke. So as he was thinking about it, so I thought, well, I'm going to go back with a really good answer for him. So I came back, Uncle Arel, are you done thinking about it? Well, I said, well, if you let me go home with you, that'd make the Jackson 5. And he said, and of course, that's how we are. We bantered like that all the time. It was these one-liners that probably nobody else got but me and him. And he would say, then don't be the one bad apple. And I was like, okay, Uncle Arel. And then as I got older, I was still begging and always wanted to come home with them. And as I got older, the luggage got bigger. And so I would say, Uncle Arel, can I go home with y'all? And the answer would be, well, is your luggage going to fit in the car? If there's room for your luggage, you can. But I want to just leave you with one last thing. And when I walked out last night after the viewing, I walked over to his Bible, and Aunt Betty and I were standing there. And I don't know why, but I just turned the page in the Bible, and he had it highlighted. And this was what was highlighted. And the message was by Jeff, and it was in 1791. And the title was, What to Do in the Time of Trouble. And I think that's the thing about Uncle Arel, that you knew he was a rock. And I know I speak for all the cousins, that we just knew he was always there. If we ever needed anything, we just knew he was always there and that he loved us. But the scripture that was highlighted
is Psalms 29. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? The Lord was the strength of his life. When the wicked, even my enemies and my foes, come upon me to eat my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this I will be confident. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I might dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble, he should hide me in his pavilion, and in the secret of his tabernacle, he should hide me. He shall set me upon a rock, and now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies and around about me. Therefore, I will offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy, and I will sing, yea, sing praises unto the Lord. And that will be one of my favorite scriptures from now on.
I just want to say how special Ariel was to me. He loved me like his own child. We had some fun times, but the story I want to tell this morning is, I told some of the family yesterday, I was blessed to have 3 fathers in my life. One that gave birth to me, but did not stay around for 2 months. I had one that's still with me today that adopted me at 4 years old. And how blessed I was of that. But during my teenage years and through my adult life, Ariel was my number 1 father. And I loved him and I praise him today. And I praise the Lord. And I thank y'all.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Huffman, daughter number 2 to Ariel and Betty. And Amy and I are up here to give some little known facts about our dad. Unless you sat around the campfire with him, you may not know these. And if you sat around the campfire with him, you might even know more. So if you do, please share with us. I just want to say I was a daddy's girl, and I'm sure my sisters will say the same. He made all of his kids feel really special, and each of us had our own unique relationship with him. Dad grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and if you know Ariel Jackson, you know he had a strong work ethic. And that began at the age of 14 when he ran a paper route over a large area of Chattanooga to make his own spending money. He would ride his bike at 2 in the morning every morning to his first paper drop, a gas station, where he would lay down and sleep on the gas island until the papers came. And he had 3 of these such drops because the route was so big. He would finish his route and ride home just in time to get ready for school. He continued that paper route until he was a junior in high school. In his high school years, Dad had a part in helping start a revival in his high school. The Billy Graham Crusade came through Chattanooga, and the captain of the wrestling team was saved. The next morning, he came early to school to pray. Dad found out about it and joined him on the second day, along with his buddy who was captain of the football team. And after the second day, many students started coming, till hundreds of students would meet at that high school in the morning before school to pray, so much so that they had to hire 2 extra teachers for Bible class. And yes, they had Bible class in public school back then. As a matter of fact, his English teacher used the Bible as her textbook.
So, I'm Amy, and another little known fact about our dad was in high school, he dated a girl named Sharon. And while it didn't work out for them, they broke up and she went on to marry the son of a baker, and they had a daughter named Debbie. So now, whenever you pass in the grocery store the Little Debbie snack cakes, you'll think of R.L. Jackson and his connection to that brand. So one day while walking down the street with his buddy in the Chattanooga area, they passed a recruiting station and walked on past, and then Dad looked over at his buddy and said, "I'm going to join the military." And he turned around and walked back into that recruiting station and came out, signed up for the Air Force because he wanted to see the world. When Dad was listing his choices of duty station after his basics, his first choice was Montana because of his love for the mountains. His second choice was Montana because of his love for the mountains. And his third choice was Sweetwater, Texas. He was sent to Sweetwater, Texas. God knew that a greater love than Dad's love for the mountains was waiting for him in Sweetwater, Texas, because that's where he met the love of his life for over 65 years, our mom, Betty. Mom and Dad were set up by his buddy, Robert Sims, who was dating a coworker of Mom's. And on their first date, they went out to the lake. And on the way back, Dad asked if she wanted to stop and get something to eat or drink. And she said yes. And they stopped at a drive-in, and she ordered a hamburger and a Coke. And Dad ordered a Coke. And after a few minutes, he jumped out of the car, and he's like, "I'll be right back. I see my buddy. I need to go talk to my buddy." Later, Mom found out that he had to borrow some money from his buddy because he didn't have enough for her hamburger. And thus began a life of caring for those he loved. From working overtime hours to selling his wedding ring to buy us Christmas presents for us kids, Dad always found a way to care for us all.
And also, while stationed in Sweetwater, Dad wanted to go home for a long weekend to surprise his mom in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So he decided to hitchhike from Sweetwater to Chattanooga. Outside of Sweetwater, he was picked up by 2 guys that he said drove 100 miles an hour all the way to Birmingham, Alabama. Arriving in Birmingham and kissing the ground, he left them and caught a ride with a salesman who was traveling to Chattanooga. 2 rides from Sweetwater to Chattanooga worked out well, as he only had a 4-day weekend. Also, at the base in Sweetwater, while he was there, they were wanting to build new barracks. However, there was many rattlesnakes in the area, and they were creating a problem with the build. And so the Army hired a guy to come out and clear away the snakes. They asked for volunteers to help with the roundup and offered them a weekend furlough and a steak dinner. And if you know R.L., then you would know he would never turn down a steak dinner. So, of course, he volunteered. They started rounding up snakes, and hundreds of 50-gallon trash cans later, he earned his steak dinner, and that was the JCs then, Sweetwater JCs then took it over, and that was the beginning of the Sweetwater Rattlesnake Roundup that still continues today. After his discharge from the Air Force, they moved to Lubbock, and Dad was employed by the Baker Company, where he worked for over 25 years. One thing that Dad was proud of was the fact he could tear down a Victor calculator that had over 2,000 parts and repair in 8 hours when it would take most guys 12 or more. After his years at the Baker Company, Dad started his own business, the Business Machine Center on 34th Street. And there is where he had his last of his 3 encounters with the FBI and Secret Service.
As a young boy in Chattanooga, Dad's family home backed up to the railroad tracks. Their backyard was right at the end, right where the railroad tracks started. So one day there was a knock on the door, and Dad's dad answered the door, and it was the Secret Service. President Roosevelt's train had been passing by on those railroad tracks, and some kids were throwing rocks at the train. While Dad was not one of the kids, he was very well aware of who it was, and that was his first encounter with the Secret Service. The second encounter was in the early 80s. The FBI showed up at the Baker Company one day where he worked and asked to speak to Dad. They went into a conference room, and they began to tell him facts about his life that had happened over the last year or so. For instance, they knew that we would normally go to Chattanooga every year for family vacation, but that year we went to Corpus Christi to see our cousin Shelley get married. And they knew what kind of cars he drove, and they knew that he would spend hours at the church, and they had the dates and times of the different times that he was at the church. In the end, they admitted to him that they had been following him for over a year because they thought that he was someone on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. The last encounter was when Brother McWright called him one day to come by the church. And when he got there, Brother Mac wanted Dad to listen to a message on the answering machine. And the message was from a guy who was threatening to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. And Dad recognized the guy's voice. And he told Brother McWright, hold on. And he went back to his business, the Business Machine Center, and found the guy's typewriter that he had brought in to be repaired. And he took it back to the church, and they called the FBI, and they came and took the typewriter and all the guy's information. And when they raided his apartment, he had plane tickets to Washington, D.C., and a detailed plan. And that was Dad's last encounter with the FBI Secret Service.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. Dad had a love for the mountains and camping. He loved the Pecos Wilderness. Our first trip to the Pecos Mountains was a family camping trip with Uncle Perry and Aunt Barbara. And after that, he started taking the scouts there for annual camping trips. He made over 27 trips to the Pecos Mountains. On one such trip, after hiking a group of scouts up to the lake, he found a quiet place to lay down under a tree while the boys ate lunch and enjoyed the lake. He woke feeling something on his face, only to stare eye to eye into the face of a big horned sheep licking his face. When asked what he did, his response was always a laugh and said, I laid there. Dad was many things to many people. According to our sister Robbie, he was a rescuer of cars stuck on mountains, the advice giver for when she locked her keys in the car all the way in San Antonio, the first person she called after rolling her VW 3 times, and the one who helped load the truck with tears rolling down his cheeks when she moved to DFW. For me, he taught me the love of fishing, hiking, and camping, and we enjoyed many such trips. He taught me loyalty to God, family, church, and country. My father was not a perfect man, but one thing I can say about him is he loved. He loved God, he loved his family well, he loved his friends well, and he loved his church. He was always concerned about others. I could say so many things about him, but if you knew him, you know. He was the strongest man I know. I love you, Dad.
Thanks. Dad instilled in Greg his love of fishing and practical jokes. If a joke was being played in our house, it was going to be from one of those two. For instance, one day, Greg told Dad to go ahead, Dad, eat that. It's guacamole. And Dad picked up a scoop and put the whole thing in his mouth, only to discover it was wasabi and not guacamole. And lucky for us, Dad also passed on his love of grilling to Greg. In the last days, Dad requested ribs, and Greg made them to perfection. And Dad ate on those ribs for 3 days. And some of his last days, the only thing he would want was fish. And Greg would get off work and go home by the store and get some fish to grill for Dad. And Dad, he loved every bit of it. For me, Dad was the first one I called. Most of the time, it was after the fact and for advice on how to fix something I had done. He was always there with advice and no judgment. He was the one who picked me up from my many wrecks, the chauffeur for Kristen, and he was my best friend. When talking with him about today, he asked for one song. And this is the song he would sing to wake us up in the morning. And this is the song that he would sing on those long drives to Tennessee. And when you hear it, it'll bring a smile to your face, as it always did to us.
Zippity-doo. So, give me a second. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine headed my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. Mr. Bluebird sitting on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine headed my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day.
That's a lot of fruit. I think it's about time for some coffee. What do y'all say? There was an international business conference, and the keynote speaker was a very prominent businessman. He had started his company and grew it to multiple sites and locations internationally. After his speech at this big conference where people from all over the nation had come to attend, he was in a receiving line, and people were greeting him and giving him appreciation and honor for his success. And a young man, very sharp dressed, very excited, approached him. He shook his hand and introduced himself, and he said, "Sir," he said, "I'm just getting started." He said, "My company I started 3 years ago." And he said, "I want to do what you do." The old gentleman looked into the eyes of that young man and gave him a look that RL has given me for about 53 years. And he said, "Son, you can't do what I do until you've done what I've done." And that's a principle about a life like R.L. Jackson. We can hear the great stories and the tributes, but you can't do it till you've done it. And a lot of us need to get it done. Daddy doesn't pray anymore. I guess he's finished talking to the Lord. He used to fold his hands, bow his head down to the floor. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. I remember when even times were bad, he thanked Jesus for everything he had, for a good wife and 4 children and the food upon our plates. Yeah, everything was right when he said grace. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. I guess he's finished talking to the Lord. He used to fold his hands, bow his head down to the floor. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. There was a time when we didn't get along, 'cause I thought I was right and he was wrong. Still, when I lay down at night, I'd hear him get down on his knees. He'd say a little prayer for me. Daddy doesn't pray anymore. I guess he's finished talking to the Lord. Well, he used to fold his hands, bow his head down to the floor. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. Today I followed Daddy down to church. I listened to the preacher read God's word. We sang his favorite hymn, but Daddy didn't make a sound. This afternoon we'll lay him in the ground, 'cause Daddy doesn't pray anymore. I guess he's finally walking with the Lord. Well, he used to fold his hands, bow his head down to the floor. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. Well, he used to fold his hands, bow his head down to the floor. But Daddy doesn't pray anymore. In the book of Proverbs, when the writer, mostly Solomon, was trying to convey a lesson to people that they could apply to their lives, he would use earthly analogies. In one verse he said, consider the lilies. They don't toil, they don't stress, but they're arrayed, they're clothed better than King Solomon. In another place he said, go to the ant, you sluggard. Has no captain, has no leader, but stores up her food and gathers it at harvest. Consider the lilies, consider the ant. But today, I invite you, but on a deeper note, I challenge you to consider the life of Robert Lawrence Jackson. If you knew RL, you knew that if you were going to meet with him, if you were going to have him to your house, and in our case, many meetings through 53 years, you had to have, and the church said, you had to have coffee. Our family had an RV some years ago, and I invited him and Ignacio Foz and Elder Jim and myself. We went down into the Palo Duro Canyon, going to camp for about 3 days, and we left on a Sunday afternoon, going to come back Wednesday morning, and I knew since we were just going to be hanging out, we were going to drink a lot of coffee. And so I went and I got some of the highest quality coffee, whole bean, by the way, because there's nothing like fresh ground brewed coffee. We loaded up, went down there, and we got the fifth wheel set up. Sun was setting, and it was time to just relax a minute. The guys sat at the table, and I said, fellas, I'm going to make some coffee. I went into that RV, and I got the bag of whole beans. I poured water into the coffee brewer, and it was then that it dawned on me that I had forgotten to pack the grinder. So I went and opened the door and I said, fellas, you aren't going to believe this. I've got this great quality coffee, but it's whole bean and I don't have a grinder. Without even missing a beat, RL just turned around and said, you got a hammer? For 3 days, multiple pots of coffee. I would sit at the picnic table, Ignacio Vaz and Elder Jim and RL would watch as I cracked every coffee bean, mincing it down to powder almost. But I'll never forget, that first pot got ready and I brought it out, poured them in some little styrofoam cups. RL lifted that cup and took a sip of that and put it on the table. He said, that's good coffee. And I can't remember the hundreds and hundreds of times that I heard him say those two words. He was a man of two words most of the time. We'd sing a song and see him in the foyer and he'd say, that's a good song, or he'd just say, good song. I coached our New Life Academy athletic teams for many years, me and Dennis Vasquez. Every now and then, not very often, but every now and then he would say, good game. After most church services, I'd see him out in the foyer and he would say, too loud. But my favorite two words that I heard him say was, good preaching. Good preaching. The Sanders Funeral Home, we've worked together for decades, and so they trust us, and so he was allowed to stay here overnight. And after everyone left, I came up and I just wanted a few minutes. And we had music playing, right? And I thought, I'm going to leave this music playing, but just for a memory Before I walked away, I said, yes, sir, I'll turn the music off. Pastoring is really one of the only occupations where it's 100% spiritual and 100% physical. Everything you do in spiritual leadership, ministry leadership, has eternal ramifications, but it's also physical. Your building can be too cold on a Sunday and somebody may not come back, but they may miss something that they need to hear from the Word of God. And so it's always pretty tense because you're dealing with both natures of human beings. And so when you have people that understand that, stand with you in that, there's a bond there that you can't really explain. I've pastored 26 years. My dad pastored 27. And I watched my dad and RL interrelate with many things: organizational planning, finance directorship. And every time my dad would say, make some coffee, RL's coming. But I never pastored with my dad involved. And so this loss has, in a way, been tougher than losing my dad from a pastor's perspective, because that's the closeness that we had, and I have it with a few others, and I'll talk about that on their day. But I met him when I was 5 years old, and for 53 years, he's been one of the most faithful men. He held this special place in our lives because my mom was right. If RL was on board, man, we're doing it. We would come up with the most weird ideas, and every time in our house, we'd be talking 2 and 3 in the morning. And my dad said, I'm gonna see what RL has to say about that. And I did the same. I always felt better when I knew that I was doing things the way that he considered it done. And I always knew when he was about to disagree. And I call this the R.L. Jackson salute. You know, if you know R.L., when this hand went up like that, just get ready. He was going to redirect. And then he would say, good coffee. So a big hole. One of my last visits, I was there a couple hours before he passed, but the visit before then, I told him, I said, you know, you're going to leave a big hole. I said, you know that canyon that we were in, Polladura Canyon, it's the second largest canyon in the nation, 800 miles deep. I said, you're going to leave a canyon, but I said, you know, RL, I'm not going to fill it. I made up my mind, I'm not going to fill it. I'm just going to leave a big hole, and I'm going to call it the R.L. Jackson Canyon. But if you'll pardon me, just one more time, I got to have a cup of coffee with R.L. Jackson. I know there's signs that say no drink or food in the auditorium, but I checked with the pastor and he told me this would be all right. But I have felt this. I still feel it. And I'm glad I feel it. In every business, every family, and definitely every church, there are certain people that do certain things that if they didn't do those certain things, the other things couldn't get done. It's not that they do things for themselves. They do these things so other people can do what they do, so good things can be accomplished. And when I do a memorial service, I always try to find a biblical character somebody in the Bible that had something close to the person that we're memorializing. And as is my discipline, I began to think about this, and it was months ago because I knew it was coming. And I thought about Abraham. It's like, yeah, he's a man of faith, excuse me. It's good coffee. He was a man of faith, but Abraham was an out front man. So I thought, well, that doesn't really apply. I thought about Moses having the audacity to try something and to go into something, not knowing all the details and the results. But that didn't feel right. I thought about the Apostle Paul, and I thought, I don't know a deeper thinker concerning the Word of God than R.L. Jackson, so that fit, but Paul's name is all over the Bible and very popular. That doesn't fit. I thought about Timothy. Timothy was a student of the ministry and of the Word of God. But I didn't feel good about that. And I remembered a story in the book of Acts. Did you know that if a few men had not done something, we would not have 2/3 of the New Testament? At least not written from Paul, because Paul would have been killed, because city government was after him, wanting to kill him. And a few men, and their names are not listed in the Bible. And when I remembered that, I was like, that's it. A few men got a basket and some rope, and they put Paul in that basket, and with that rope, they lowered him over the city walls to safety. If those men had not done what they did, we wouldn't have all that the Apostle Paul gave us. And we don't even know their names. R.L. Jackson was a rope man. R.L. Jackson was the guy that would help you in that situation where there was no other way out. He never drove a bus to bring kids to a Sunday school class to hear him teach. He never made a phone call to people that had missed a few services to try to encourage them to come back to church so he could lead them in worship. He did that so others could lead them in worship. He never ran a tape recording outfit and mailed tapes all over the nation so people could hear one of his messages. But for many years, R.L. Jackson ran our tape ministry and mailed tapes to people all over the nation. We didn't even know him, but it was to hear the message of another person. He was a rope man. He was the guy that would help you out of situations, and he didn't care about his name. I think in 53 years, probably 10 times I've seen him hold a microphone. And it was usually to encourage people to give for a cause or for a person, not himself. And you think, well, he's gone now, but he's not. His character and his traits and his values are right so deep in the hearts of his family. My dad passed away on a Saturday night, early Sunday morning, and I was paint contracting at the time. And I left. I was going to finish a job real late Saturday night. I got the call about my dad, and I went to the hospital in painter's whites, actually. And when that all happened and my dad passed away, Greg Jackson approached me and he said, give me the keys to that job site and I'll finish it for you. I never lifted a finger at that job again. Just went and picked up my trailer. He didn't let me pay for it. Did you bill me, Greg? I forgot. Greg, you're a rope man. I really believe that I could call Greg Jackson and ask him, and he would help me according to his skill set, and his skill set's vast. Betty, the reason that you go to those prayer meetings, and you get up and come sit and worship, it's because you're rope people. Never on the screen, never honored except when we remember. But without you, we would not be what we are. Robbie's been working basically with mergers and acquisitions, basically the same job, I think, since he got out of high school, just about. A Baker family member was here last night from the old Baker Office Supply Company. And that woman said, if it hadn't been for RL, and she named some categorical performances of that business, she said, we simply could not have done it. Evidently, through mergers and acquisitions, some people have thought, we got to have Robbie, because they brought her along with everyone. That's because you're a rope person. That's part of your dad and mom's legacy that's inside of you. Now, Lisa's not very out front and vocal, but I want to tell you what baton has been clearly passed. What my mom said about RL, that the pastor felt good about things if RL was on board, that's how I feel about Lisa. If I know that Lisa believes in something, I'm telling you the truth. I just feel better about it. You're a rope person. You help situations. And Amy, it's obvious. Every time you get up from this room, after the days of preparation, and you go back and teach those kids, you're not teaching them Amy Jackson's correspondence course. You're not teaching them something about yourself. It's for someone else. Jesus Christ teaching those kids, you guys are rope people. And without the Jackson family led by R.L. Jackson, I don't know if we would even still be in Lubbock. Now, some of you may applaud that. But I know the truth. And that's why we honor him as we do. And we have a few of those just for everybody to remember. But don't forget, you can't do what he did until you've done what he's done. Little boy was 10 years old, and his grandfather passed away, and he had been led, raised, trained, and mentored by his grandfather. His mother and father had some deep problems, and one day they just went over to the lady's mother's house, and they visited for a little while. Their son was there, and for whatever reason, they snuck out of the house. And the grandparents never saw the parents of this little boy again. They left their little boy with his grandparents, just a little guy. But those older people took that little boy and they raised him. The grandfather spent so much time with him, taught him how to do things with his hands and work around the farm place. He was only 10 years old, but man, he was experienced. And his grandfather died. A few days after the funeral, he was sitting out on one of the stools in their yard, and he was crying deeply. And his grandmother went out there, and she said, "Son, I know you're hurting." And he said, "It's not that grandfather passed away." He said, "What I'm sad about is I will never see him again. I'll never see him again in my life." She took him by the hand and she said, "Walk with me." She walked away from the house and she turned the boy around and she said, "Look at that house." She said, "Your grandfather built that house with his own hands." She said, when you look at that house, you can see your grandfather. She took him out by the fence row and lined him up beside it. She said, look at that fence, son. You see how straight it is? See how level that barbed wire is? She said, every time you look at that fence, your grandfather built that fence. You can see your grandfather in the fence. She said, look over at that barn. Your grandfather built that barn, and when a storm blew it over, a few of his buddies came over, and in a few days it was standing again. She said, when you look at that barn, son, you can see your grandfather. She said, when you go in the shop, all the organization of the tools and the various things that he had, she said, you can stand in the middle of that shop and you can see your grandfather. The little boy was only 10, but he had some wisdom. And he said, I know that. He said, I've already been doing that. He said, but the issue is when I grow up and I have to move away, I'll never see him again. I'll grow up and get my job and he'll forever be in the past. She took both of that boy's hands and she pulled him up close. She says, son, listen to me. She said, when you grow up and you leave home and you get that job, she said, when you show up on time and when you give a good day's work, you're going to see your grandfather and yourself. She said, when you take a man's hand and shake it and make a deal and you keep that deal, you're going to see your grandfather. She said, when you choose a woman to love and you have children of your own and you stay devoted to them and you love them, you're going to see your grandfather. She said, son, and listen, Jacksons, the mighty Jacksons. She said, your grandfather is just not around here. He's in you. He's in you. I want to be someone special in the eyes of the people who love me. The only thing I'll ever ask of life is just to die knowing my people are proud of me. Lord, let me die knowing my loved ones were proud of me. In the eyes of my woman, let me be a shining light, a man who thinks of others, a strong but gentle lover, a fortress she can cling to in the night. The eyes of my children, let me be a Superman, a knight in shining armor, a cowboy, not a farmer, a circus clown with magic in my hands. I just want to be someone special in the eyes of the people who love me. The only thing I'll ever ask of life is just to die knowing my people are proud of me. Lord, let me die knowing my loved ones were proud of me. In the eyes of my people, let me be a special friend, a friend they can rely on, a shoulder they can cry on, a fighter who stand by them to the very end. Just wanna be someone special in the eyes of the people who love me. The only thing I'll ever ask of life is to knowing my people were proud of me. Lord, let me die knowing my loved ones were proud of me. Father, we thank you that that prayer was answered. I don't know if he articulated it that way, but I believe the heart of R.L. Jackson was just that. Didn't matter who else saw him, but I think he wanted his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to see the man that he was. And so I thank you myself for letting our lives intersect from Houston to Lubbock, Texas. Some plans don't always work out. Pray for Montana, get to Sweetwater. But they work out for the best. And I just pray that you would bless the family, strengthen Betty, strengthen the girls, and keep Greg strong. Don't ever let them forget who they are. They're rope people. They're the people that do things so other people can do some things that will affect even other people. Thank you for the impression that he made upon us in our church for many years, the many lives that he touched through business, through relationships. We just honor you for the gifts that you give us in the people that we live with and live around. So we thank you for these things in Jesus' name, amen. I'm walking on sunshine, yeah. I'm walking on sunshine, oh. I'm walking on sunshine, and it's time to feel good. I'm walking on sunshine, yeah. I'm walking on sunshine, oh. I'm walking on sunshine, yeah, and it's time to feel good. As you come by and see RL's physical temple the last time, we ask you to just go ahead and exit the building. Go to your vehicle so we can make procession to Peaceful Gardens. Thank you again for being here today. Last night I had a crazy dream. A wish was granted just for me. It could be for anything. I didn't ask for money or a mansion in Malibu. I simply wished for one more day with you. One more day, one more time, one more sunset, maybe I'd be satisfied. But then again, I know what it would do. It'd leave me wishing still for one more day with you. One more day. The first thing I do is pray for time to crawl. I'd unplug the telephone and keep the TV off. I'd hold you every second, say a million I love yous. That's what I do with one more day with you. One more day, one more time, one more sunset, maybe I'd be satisfied. But then again, I know what it would do. It'd leave me wishing still for one more day with you. One more day, one more time, one more sunset, maybe I'd be satisfied. But then again, I know